Hey, y'all, what is up? Welcome to Tuesday Night Live. Battle Creek students, we are so glad you're here tonight. It is going to be so good.
That is right, Kate. It is going to be a great night. And wherever you are right now, whether you're in your living room, your kitchen, let us know that you are here with us and you're tracking by dropping your favorite animal emoji. Can somebody please drop a cheetah for me? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cheetah, interesting. That's an interesting animal that you associate yourself with on that.
I do that. It's my favorite animal, Kate.
Interesting, interesting. Well, hey, speaking of animals, I've been watching my favorite animated movie. It has an animal. That's a clue.
Okay.
Can you guess what my favorite animated movie is? It's on Disney Plus because I've been living that Disney Plus lifestyle.
Frozen 2. No,
But let me tell you, I have been killing some Frozen 2, though. Killing it.
Nala is all about it, so y'all better get on that Frozen 2 game if you're not already on it.
The 4-year-olds and me, we're all on the Frozen 2 game. But listen, if you think you know my favorite animated movie, put it in the comments below. If you were on the bus with me to camp, you know, all right? You know it.
It has to be The Lion King, right?
No, that's like overrated.
Come on, we all know that The Lion King is the greatest movie of all time. And guess what? The live action one just came out on
like 6 months ago?
Disney Plus.
Okay, all right.
The live action. So you need to make sure you watch that too. It is going to be so great. Hey, and speaking of great, we're about to have a great night. And I'm going to kick it over to Kimmy and Daniel. So, Kimmy, Daniel, where you at?
Hey, thanks, Jay. Guys, welcome back. We're glad you're here with us. If you're here with us last week, we talked about our 7 quarantine essentials.
The Jesus number.
And out of all the lists, I still think ours was the greatest. And we asked you guys, if you disagreed or agreed, send in a few of your quarantine essentials. And man, we got some good ones. We got stuff like 2K20, Fortnite, the new Call of Duty that I'm absolutely awful at. Kimmy, I'm guessing you know what the next one is?
Yeah, that next one is definitely TikTok. But I'm not good at TikTok, but what I am good at is, I'll tell you in a minute.
Well, guys, also, I want to give a shout out to a Midtown student. Cole Schneer told me that one of his quarantine essentials was his bike. Man, that's awesome. Staying active, staying healthy, get some fresh air, but make sure you ride with a face mask on, freshly hand sanitized hands, and gloves on, for sure.
For sure. So what I am good at is trick shots. And so that's our next challenge. That definitely didn't go in the bucket. That's our next challenge for you is going to be the best trick shot video. And so go ahead, create something fun and send it in. Daniel, what can they create?
Man, y'all can be as creative as you want. It can be as simple as throwing a grape up in the air and catch it in your mouth, or you can go crazy and, did you just do that? Or it can be as crazy as you throwing a Nerf rocket 100 yards into a trash can. Guys, whatever you do, record it and send it to our Battle Creek students Instagram page. We will pick the best ones and we will repost them. But that is it for us. Jay, back over to you.
All right. Hey, I'm excited to see all of those trick shots happening. Y'all better send in some good ones. And please throw a rocket 100 yards into a basket. That would be awesome. Hey, speaking of great night, like I said before, we got Kate Downing who's going to be bringing the word to us today. We got some worship. But right now, we're going to kick it to Brian Preston, who's sitting with a familiar face that we all know and love. So, Brian, over to you.
What's up, guys? Thanks, Jay. Man, it has been a crazy season. And so thank you guys for joining us. If you're just now jumping online, we got some fun stuff still in store for tonight, including my good friend, Eli Hamaya, the son of our pastor, Dr. Hamaya. What's going on, man? You good?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I am well. I am getting ready for all right, so the very first thing I want you to answer is this. How have you been quarantining? Like, what have you been doing to pass the time?
All right, so obviously I got a little bit of online school, but it's senior year, so we all know it's kind of a joke. But then
Sorry, teachers.
I've been doing some yard work. My dad's definitely taking advantage of me not having anything to do, so
no child labor laws there,
work.
you know?
Yeah. We busted out the Wii, you know, we're getting some
Guitar Hero?
Getting some Guitar Hero,
Yeah, come on.
some Super Mario Bros. In, and obviously, like, my Fortnite skills right now are just on point. So, like, I've been gaming, watching
That's
a lot
awesome.
of movies. Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, well, y'all drop in the comments. What have you been doing during this quarantine time to pass the time? Eli's been child labor lawn over here with his yard work. But second thing I want to ask you is, what is one song that you have just like been jamming to in this season? Like, what's the one that stands out amongst all the other ones right now?
All right. So right now, probably like what I listen to the most is probably 6 Months by John Kay. But you can't go wrong with Graves in the Gardens, you know?
Okay, all right. So a little bit of worship, a little bit of alternative. All right, I like it. I don't know who John Kay is, but I'm going to look it up. All right, next one. What is one thing that God is teaching you in your walk with Christ in this season right now? Like, what would you say God has just zeroed in on me on this particular thing?
I mean, I think for me especially, it's just like patience because, like with senior year and stuff, I know a lot of like the other seniors and stuff. Everyone's kind of like posting like, "Oh, I'm so sad. Like, I've been looking forward to graduation my whole life, and now I don't even get it." And it just feels like a lot of like the last things have kind of just gotten like slowly taken away. And I know it's hard for us to like kind of talk about it right now because we don't want to seem like shallow, like, oh, like first world problems, you know? And so that's just kind of like the thing that I think for me is just being patient during this time. And like, even when we can't see what God's doing, like we know that he's working and that his plan is ultimately better than anything our plan could be. And so during these times where we're like, God, are you faithful? And we're questioning it, like, I think it's important for us to look back and be like, okay, God, like, you've been faithful every time before this, and you're going to be faithful now.
That's so good. And I think even for a lot of seniors out there as you're watching right now, like, it's a season of trying, if you will, and there's just a lot of external things fighting against this season in your life. But what Eli's just so greatly put was like, we have an opportunity to be faithful as God has been faithful to us and showing faithfulness. So that's so good. If you guys will, if you're watching online, drop in the comments, maybe something that God is teaching you right now in this season, even if it's one word, one phrase, whatever. And the last thing I want to ask you is this. Tonight, we've been in this series called Church in the Wild, and we're talking tonight about sin and temptation in the wild. And so when it comes to sin and temptation in your life, the scripture talks about fleeing temptation. So what are some like things that you've done or practices that you put in your life to help you flee temptation in your life?
Yeah, well, like the way I see it is right now, like since everything is kind of out of the ordinary, we are all in our deserts. And what I mean by that is when Jesus, you know, in like John 4, when he went out into the wilderness and was led by the Spirit to go out there and to fast and to pray and to seek God during this time. And that was when Jesus faced his temptations, you know. And right now, whenever things are different for all of us and we're not in our normal routines and we're not in our normal schedules, it's really easy for it to feel like we're in the wilderness. And a lot of people think that because Jesus was in the wilderness that he had to be weak because he was hungry and he was thirsty and he'd been out there for 40 days and 40 nights. But no, that's not necessarily it. Like, I think that Jesus, that he was able to be at his strongest point because he was able to have that dependency on God to get him through this time. So I think as we're in this time where it feels like we're in our desert, that if we're able to just put our dependency on God and be able to lean into him, you know, like we've got a lot of free time right now, and there's no excuse not to be in our word and praying, because like this is the time where we can lean in and we can really see what God has for us, and ultimately when we're in our desert.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think it's so true in, I think it's Matthew 4, where Jesus is in the desert and he's talking about how to escape temptation. And one of the things that stands out, and like you alluded to, is just his dependency on the Father in that moment. And so in this season, as we are in the wild and sin and temptation come your way, man, I know that that is one thing that you can definitely lean on is your dependency on God in this season. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that right now. And so I'm going to throw it over to Kate. Kate, drop it on us. Come on.
Hey, y'all. Well, I am so excited. Thanks so much, Brian and Eli. I'm excited tonight to continue in our series, Church in the Wild. Last week, if you joined us, we heard from Pastor Shagun as he talked about the idea of battling fear and anxiety, and that God, in fact, gave us the cure to fear in faith. And then we heard from Mark as he talked about the truth of us needing to declare truth out loud to battle against the lies of the enemy that he so easily puts into our thoughts and into our mind. And tonight we're going to continue in this series, Church in the Wild, and we're going to talk about temptation and sin, and really, honestly, the moment in between those two things. The moment where temptation becomes sin, the decision that we make to allow a lie or a thought or a thing to become sin in our life. And before we dive into that, I want to share with you what I think are two of the reasons why temptation so often turns into sin in our life. And these are two things that you and I would guarantee you have already faced this week, maybe even today. And those two things are this: loneliness and the feelings of being forgotten. You see, the other day I was scrolling on Instagram. I have a lot of free time these days given quarantine. And I was scrolling through Instagram and I was checking all the stories, all the Instagram like challenges that are going around, you know, like see a puppy, share a puppy, or like the push-up challenge. Thank you, no one, for challenging me to that because I would die. Or the quarantine bingo, you know, where you tag your friends and challenge them to do the same thing. Well, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw one of my friends post one of these challenges. And I was like, oh, that's cool, like whatever. And I almost scrolled on past, but instead I looked and I zoomed in on who she had tagged in that post. And I realized that she had tagged all of our mutual friends. And it didn't really matter. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't really care if I had been tagged in this post or not. But all of a sudden, I began to have these feelings of loneliness, and the feeling of being forgotten just overwhelmed my thoughts and overwhelmed my emotions, because I thought, you know what? She probably didn't tag me because I'm not as fun as those girls. And she probably didn't tag me because I'm not as cool as they are. I'm not as pretty as they are. She probably tagged them because she likes spending time with them more than me. And she's probably forgotten about me, and she probably doesn't think about me anymore. And I began to allow these feelings and these thoughts of loneliness and the feeling of being forgotten to consume me. And I think what is true for us is that so often when we hear those voices of loneliness and we begin to believe the lie that we've been forgotten, it is so easy for us to hear temptation and to turn it into sin. In fact, we see that in the book of Exodus. In Exodus chapter 32, if you have your Bibles, you can open that up tonight or maybe Google it if you have your phone there with you. But we're going to look at Exodus chapter 32. We're going to look at a couple of verses. And when we jump into this story, we meet the people of Israel at the base of Mount Sinai. It was this big mountain, right? So we meet them here. Before we meet them here, we see in the chapters before that God has miraculously delivered them out of Egypt. He has brought them out of slavery in like the coolest and craziest of ways. We've seen God deliver them from the Egyptian army and from the Red Sea. In fact, he parts the sea and dries the ground so that when the people walk across, they do so with ease. We see God show his love and his provision to the people. When they get to the other side, they begin to worry and fear about how they're going to get water to drink. And so God literally brings water out of rocks. That's nuts. The way that God has provided and protected and shown up to his people is literally unforgettable. And in fact, right before we read these verses in chapter 32, and just a few chapters before, we see that Aaron and Moses and some of the leaders of the people of Israel had gone up on this mountain and they had met with God face to face. In fact, Aaron said that when he looked at God, he saw where his feet were standing, and he said that it was as though God was standing on sapphires. That's a jewel. You can go Google it later. But it was so beautiful, he said it was like looking at the crystal blue sky. So Aaron and these leaders had seen God do incredible and miraculous things. They had met with God face to face. And Moses sent Aaron and the leaders of Israel back down to the people at the bottom of the mountain, and he said, I'm going to go meet with God. Would you wait with the people? And that's where we dive into this story here is 40 days after Aaron and his friends had come off of the mountain from meeting with God. And 40 days later, this is what happens. Chapter 32, verse 1 says this: when the people saw that Moses was delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, up. Literally, that means get up, right? Make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Guys, it had been 40 days of silence from Moses and 40 days of silence from God. The people hadn't heard from God or seen God in 40 days. And after only a month, a little over a month, the people came to Aaron and said, Moses, we have been forgotten. And Moses, we feel so lonely. Or Aaron, we feel so lonely that we need you to construct for us. We need you to create for us a God that we can worship because our God has left us. He has forgotten us. And we meet Aaron here in this moment of decision. He hears the voices of temptation come and say, Aaron, it is up to you. You've got to take control of the situation. God is no longer trustworthy. God has left you and forgotten you. And so therefore it is up to you to fulfill the longings of your hearts and the people's hearts. And we see Aaron in this moment of a temptation decision. Is he going to allow that temptation to become sin? Or is he going to set his eyes on the God who said, I will never leave you or forsake you? So let's read and see what Aaron does. In verse 2, it says this. So Aaron said to them, take off the rings of gold that are in your ears and your wives' ears, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said this, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Can you imagine just 40 days after they had seen God face to face? They are crafting their own God. They're literally making a golden cow out of their earrings. And they're declaring that this is the God who delivered them. Guys, we look at this story and we think Aaron is nuts. That's crazy. But here's the deal is that we're like 2 weeks into quarantine. And many of us are beginning to make idols out of Netflix. And many of us are beginning to believe the lie that God has forgotten us and that we are alone. In fact, we are beginning to build idols out of Instagram challenges. In reality, our God calls us to know that in Hebrews, he says he will never leave us or forsake us. That means that he will never make us lonely, and he will never forget us. And so tonight, students, I want to encourage you in this, in that moment when those feelings of loneliness and the feeling of being forgotten begin to overwhelm your thoughts and your emotions. And in the moment when you begin to hear the voices of temptation that say, if you would just open up that sight and look at those things that you know don't honor God, but they'll fulfill you for just a little while. Or you begin to hear the voices tell you that God has forgotten you and your friends have forgotten you. And so you might as well text that boy that you broke up with 2 months ago because you know he's no good for you, but you know he would respond to your texts. It's really easy for us in that moment of temptation to take our eyes off of the God who has promised to never leave us or forsake us and to believe the lies of the enemy and to allow that temptation to become sin in our life. But students, here's what I want to encourage you in. Would you prepare ahead of time? Would you decide beforehand that when that temptation comes, when those lies, those feelings of loneliness and being forgotten begin to enter into your mind, would you declare the truth that our God has said that he will never leave us, that he will never forsake us, and that he always provides for us a way of escape. Students, maybe tonight you need to hear this clearly, so let me say it one more time. Prepare ahead of time for that temptation decision. Know ahead of time that you will set your eyes on the King of Kings, the creator and sustainer of the universe, the provider and protector, the God that goes before and behind us. Set your eyes on him so that that temptation does not turn into sin and idolatry in your life. And maybe tonight you're thinking, yeah, Kate, I get that, but I think there's already some idols I've built. I've already been running to Netflix to numb the pain of the loneliness that I feel, or I've already been running to that person that I know I should not be in a relationship with, but I just feel so lonely. Maybe there's some idols that you have already crafted with your own two hands. Students, let me tell you tonight that there is a God who is able to tear down those idols. Because in fact, when Moses came off that mountain and he saw that golden calf that they had built, he didn't put it to the side and he didn't tell them to ignore it. No, when Moses came down, he burned it. He said, that thing has no place here. That idol in your life has no place in this camp. It has no place in your heart. And so students, tonight, God is asking that you would get rid of the idols in your life. And tonight we're going to get a chance to hear from my friend Turner, who's a student pastor at our Owasso campus, and he's going to talk to us about what it means to identify and to get rid of the idols that we've created in our lives. Turner?
Thank you so much, Kate. That was an awesome word. Hey, tonight I've got two things for you guys. Two applications that you can do right now that will help you get rid of those idols in your life. The first one is this: we must identify the idols in our life. We must identify those people or those things that have taken the throne of our heart. And the first way that you can do that is this: ask the Lord. Just say, God, what is taking the center spot in my life where you should be? And if for whatever reason you might have a little bit of difficulty hearing God's voice, then something else you can do that is practical on your part is you can try to identify them yourself. And what that can look like is by doing these two things. The first one is this: what dominates your thoughts? What or who dominates your mind? You wake up and you think about that person or that thing. You go to sleep thinking about that person or that thing. Another way to identify some idols in your life are what brings you comfort. Whenever you're in a difficult season of life, or you're lonely, or you're going through a rough situation, what do you run to for comfort? Or who do you run to for comfort? If it's not God, then it could very well potentially be an idol in your life. And so for me, a couple of examples would be this. One, basketball. In high school, I woke up thinking about basketball. I went to sleep thinking about basketball. What would my career look like with basketball? For some of you, like Kate said, it might be Netflix. You go to Netflix for comfort for whatever reason. It could be a person also. And so once you have identified those idols, here's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to get rid of it. And I'm not saying that you have to completely cut it out of your life, but what I am saying is if it's the center of your life, if it is on the throne of your heart, then that's where God needs to be. And we're going to use this phrase: burn the calf. Burn the calf. Get rid of those idols in your life. And so now we're going to go to a time of worship, and I'm going to turn it over to my friend Trey right here.
As I walk down through the valley, I let your love rise above every fear. It's like the sun shaping the shadow, and in my weakness your glory appears. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this space. It's not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this space. The Lord is in this place. In our homes, say, come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. Oh God, the Lord is in this place. Oh, the Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Sing this out wherever you are. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? In my brokenness, God. 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? In the middle of the loneliness, God. 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
Students, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Awesome to be able to host you guys on this awesome Tuesday night. Hey, come back next week, same time, same place. I believe we're going to be hearing from our main guy, Mark Cruz, so it's going to be an incredible night. Hey, don't forget to send us your trick shots. We want to see those. So we love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and you guys have a great night.